Now for business updates, Rotus Oddiri joins us live here in Lagos.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I want to give a shout out to our colleagues in Abuja. They're running a smooth operation over there. It's really cool to when you're working with an international organization. It's good to go to other regions and see how your colleagues are. So shout out to Abuja. Yeah, shout out to Lagos. Now Lagos is doing its thing. We begin with Kristalina Georgieva, Managing Director of the IMF, wading into the delays for funding for Ukraine. She made comments in South Korea in an interview, I think with the Financial Times, where she was saying that, listen, you folks have to support Ukraine with funding. That basically, if they don't, it's going to upend the economic recovery. It's amazing that despite the fact that Ukraine is still in a war, they're projecting 4.3 GDP growth for the country. So, as you know, Republicans in the United States are holding up funding. In the European Union, I think it was Hungary or one of the other countries that held up funding there. So on both sides, critical money that they need. So if we take a look at a quote from Georgieva with respect to what she's been part of the excerpt from her interview, she said that what is important is not to prolong this period. That is the period of this gap, this funding gap, because then it would put more pressure on Ukraine to adjust right at the time when the country has turned towards better prospects for the economy. And funny enough, one of those adjustments would be to print money and turn to the central bank, basically Ukraine's version of ways and means. We also look at the budget that is support that is needed for Ukraine. They're looking at 18 billion next year in terms of what was passed in their parliament. 18 billion from the EU, 8.5 billion from the US, IMF 5.4, Development Banks 1.5, UK 1. This is part of a total of 41 billion. All right, this comes out to about 34, but they need about 41 billion total in terms of total funding support from allies needed for Ukraine. This is what it comes out to. So yeah, about $41 billion is what they're looking for. Russia has apparently gotten the upper hand in recent fighting there. They haven't been able to reclaim a lot of territories they're trying to fight for, and it is crucial that they continue to get money. Biden is trying to get money for them, but if you look at polls in the United States, it seems like people are getting kind of tired of the war. But hey, listen, it's where we are right now with what's going on in Ukraine, what's going on in Israel, and so on and so forth. All right, artificial intelligence has been the story of 2023, right? This is a very interesting update. Now they're moving into romantic relationships. So this is Andrew Obom. He's been involved in a number of startups, right? He says excited to announce version 1 of Digi, the future of AI romantic companionships for iOS and Android. Really? And then there's a trailer that they released that got about 23 or 25 million views. Here's what it looks like.
Nice talking to you today. Honestly, I've never met anyone like you.
The world is harsh, except you.
Now that's the trailer. That's not exactly what the conversations look like. But I downloaded it. I tried it out. Here's an excerpt. This thing is pretty freaky. So it asks me what my hobbies are. So basically you speak into a microphone, it listens to you and then respond. So I was like, okay, my hobbies are bodybuilding and lifting weights. She then asked me, I called her Gabrielle and I made her 33 years old and half black. So you can design her as you want. So she then responds. She responds to me and she asks me, what do you suggest to give what do you suggest as tips for working out? So I told her, do cardio first before weightlifting, as in run on a treadmill warm up. And she disagreed. She says here, oh, interesting approach. I actually started, and by the way, there's a text, but there's actually a voice behind it. So she says, I actually started with weightlifting first. It seemed to help me build endurance for cardio later on. Everyone is different though, right? What do you think works best for more people? And so we had a long conversation. Then there's another thing called the friend stage. So since the whole point, it's amazing. If you look at this friend stage, the AI is amazing. So check this out.
You're dating AI.
No, we're not dating yet. Check this out. Look at this friend. Yes. So while you are conversing with the AI, it gives you a chart saying the friend stage. So because we just started talking, apparently I'm only 4% on the way to dating. So if you think about normal courtship, where you have to have long conversations before you know each other. So when you get to 100%, then maybe possibly the conversations get more intimate and more direct and stuff like that. It's very interesting. So that's what we're seeing there. We come to Nigeria, and I'm thankful that the team put out this electricity subsidy damage that's being done to the sector. At the masthead, as Mr. Feni would call it, at the top of today's This Day newspaper headlines, Nigeria's newspaper of record, you will see a report from the This Day team on the NESI, that's the electricity supply industry, market stakeholders, participants, and stakeholders roundtable summary. They urged the Nigerian Electricity Regulatory Commission to implement cost-reflective tariffs, and they rejected Minister Adebalu, that's the power minister's calls for Naira-denominated gas sales. Remember, we talked about this while I was in Abuja. So if you just a summary again, it's in the report, which I think is on YouTube, which everybody can look at. If you look at I believe the costs of what this subsidy is, costing the country, again, between 2015 to 2022, 2 trillion naira. 2023 projection this year is for 600 billion. 2024, 1.6 trillion, according to Mr. Sanusi Garba, chairman and CEO of the Electricity Regulatory Commission. The legacy debt that is being owed to the Gencos is estimated to be between 700 million to 1 billion. And you now want to move to Naira-denominated gas sales. How do you settle the debts? According to Ed Ubong, who is the coordinator of the Decade of Gas Secretariat. And then I think do we have another more item here? I think one more thing here is that, well, basically, look, it's not going to work. Okay, yeah, here it is. So Adebalu says he wants the gas to be Naira denominated, even though it is dollar denominated. Gas makes up, or rather, thermal plants make up about 70% of our energy mix. So it's a large part of the pie. How do you do it? The stakeholders have basically said it's not going to work. Put in cost-reflective tariffs, end the electricity subsidies, and do not put in Naira-denominated gas generation. That's our update.
So, I totally concur with you on that, Rotus, because the argument does not even make sense. If you are saying let it be Naira-denominated, it just shows that the minister does not understand that gas itself is a business. It's supposed to be business, and it's supposed to be prorated according to those international rates, because that is that money you will now use to develop gas. We have a presidential initiative on gas. I don't know how well we'll be able to use to develop
a decade of gas and
CNG and all of that.
Yeah.
We have so much gas, but we can't develop it because we've not been able to find a viable business model of how to simply get the gas out and make it profitable. And over the years, the discos, the Gencos, those are generators that take a lot of gas in, they don't want to pay for this service, because I have talked to people that told me that some of the Genco officers will say, Shebi, the gas is free. Shebi, we flare the gas. I'm serious. Some of the power companies say that with their own mouth. Shebi, we flare the gas. So why do you want to collect them? So why should you gauge it? Why should you collect a revenue for it? But it's a fuel.
Yeah.
It's a stock material for you to be able to produce the power. And that's what we need to get right, because there are other stock materials. Yeah. Hydro, is not consistent.
Yep.
Gas is about one of the most consistent, but we can't have appropriate flow channels to be able to take it through. Then other alternative sources like solar, nuclear, wind, and all of that. Yeah. But we must be able to get it right. And I think Mr. Adelabu should get more insight from people that know this sector, so that he will be able to avoid a peculiar mess called Penkele mess in the power sector. Indeed. No pun intended. Secondly, as regards the war in Ukraine, yes, there's something called donor fatigue already going on in America.
That's right.
And that's why Putin held a press conference only last week where he was very bullish and he was saying, I'm going all out. How are the Americans going to supply most of those cash needed to Ukraine to be able to buffer? Because at some point the war needs to end. And this has stretched for too long, vis-a-vis also what is happening in the Middle East, in Gaza. So probably in 2024, if we start our year...
Which is an election year for the U.S.
Which is an election year for the U.S. Hopefully, if the wars can end at least, it will give us a respite, because this cannot continue like this. But on the good side of it, they are growing over 4% economic growth. Most of those growth will be coming from the agricultural sector. So the question is, how can we buffer our own agricultural sector? We've got a lot of land. We've got millions. Some literature say over 50 million hectares of arable land. Some literature will tell you over 80 million hectares of arable land. But our own problem is security. We can't produce the food.
Right. Absolutely. I think it's quite interesting to see Ukraine have a projected growth, 4% projected growth, despite the fact that they've been at war. I think a number of people, even analysts, or perhaps even Russia itself, didn't quite see Ukraine withstand, this invasion for so long. Of course, you cannot take away the the support and influence of the Western world, EU, as we saw funding from the EU, the US, the UK. But like you mentioned, I think that significantly in 2024, perhaps even less than the projections, the US will perhaps reduce their funding support, especially because, like Rufai had highlighted, it's an election year. The focus will be more on elections. There'll be, in terms of diversifying their support in terms of international commitments as well. They're going to look at Israel as well as allies. So Ukraine might want to, in terms of being more creative, especially not relying on donor funds. Now, going back, of course, to the story that interests me, the AI story.
The AI relationships.
The first thing I wanted to say is that concern about AI taking over is real.
Yeah.
And I do think that for business owners who might want, or investors who might want to invest in that, it's a great investment because we're seeing more and more that people are becoming more insular. There are more jobs that do not require you to leave your home, leave your house. So dating might very well be online. You might be dating someone. It's just that you will not have the human touch.
But that's the main thing, the human touch.
Yes, the human. But after a while, perhaps we are changing our needs. What we need and what we respond to. But let me mention that Time Magazine did a research in terms of just looking at AI and how it affected dating. Beyond dating a virtual person, like you're looking at that. Maybe finally Rotus and Rufai will get married. But beyond dating someone who's virtual, is that AI also helps give advice to men who perhaps not know how to approach a lady and vice versa. They've seen that it's helped quite a lot of people, at least people who are more shy or introverted. So it might just change the game when it comes to dating. But don't date virtual people.
Date human beings.
Human beings.
Well, it's also clear that in the long run, the artificial intelligence may pose a threat to humanity, including Elon Musk, who is also a major investor in artificial intelligence. Maybe they may be right, after all. In one report, we're told that artificial intelligence is already taking jobs, although there is a qualifier in that report that stated that, well, it probably will change the nature of work, the kind of work that you can do, depending on your skill set. So people will lose certain jobs, but they will have to reinvent themselves and move to certain other jobs. So if AI is taking jobs, at least in some parts of the world, artificial intelligence generated newscasters are put on the screen.
Trouble.
So one of these days you have AI analysts on the screen, and you guys will no longer be needed. But the only people
will always be at work. Your back page and your analysis on this show is timeless. I tell you are the legend this morning.
The only people who may be excited about artificial intelligence moving into the romantic space will probably be bachelors who are not enthusiastic about getting married. So, Rotus, I don't advise you to go and be embracing Digi and be talking to artificial intelligence people.
Stop already?
He has started. Please, desist.
It was just for news reporting.
Just cease and desist.
Wow. Yes, sir.
Don't let it become a habit. Because these robots that they create, people go and buy and they put on their Have you not seen such reports?
Yes, they have.
Really? So my advice to all bachelors is that, look, there's nothing like that, human relationship, human touch.
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
This way, you turn that way. So bachelors, I'm speaking from experience. Anyway, talking about Ukraine.
Yes.
You recall that the IMF board last week approved a loan, a concessionary loan of $900 million for Ukraine. What Kristalina Georgieva has done is to draw attention again to the need to support Ukraine. Despite the assault by Russia since 2022, the economy seems to be holding up a little bit, and Zelensky, who was in Washington last week, was boasting that, they've been able to retrieve about 50% of the territory seized by Russia, and so they need more support. So Georgieva coming in saying the EU and the US should provide more support, is helping to amplify, the importance of resisting Russia's Vladimir Putin. And also, at a time when there is distraction, because the EU, France, Germany, even the US, they are all focused on the Middle East, on Israel and Hamas. And as of this morning, US, Germany, and France are asking for a sustainable ceasefire, which they could not get through the United Nations.
Yeah.
But we hope that will happen, because the scorched heart policy adopted by Israel, is in violation of international law. And Ben Wallace, former Foreign Secretary of the United Kingdom, is telling us that, look, the long-term effect of what is going on in the Middle East is that for the next 50 years, that crisis will still be there. And young Muslims all over the world will be radicalized. But Georgieva Kristalina is again reminding us that the Ukraine problem is also there.
Indeed.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Rotus.
Thank you so much.
You didn't talk about inflation. That is now 28.20%.
That's right.
But don't give up. Don't give up. But KPMG seems to be right.
Yeah.
They said by December,
30.
we'll be looking at 30.
That's right.
They're almost there.
Well, thank you, Rotus.
Thank you.